Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to give another minute or so for people to join us before we get started. So while you're waiting, if you want to jump into the chat and let us know where you're joining us from today. I know some people have been doing it already. We've got Colorado, Germany, Atlanta, and oh, that must be a lot better weather than I'm having today. So I'm a little envious. Italy, wow, we're really international this morning, which is great to see. All right. I think people are still going to be trickling in, but let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Molly Lord, and I am a member of the team at Scrum Alliance, and we are so excited to welcome you to the Elevate Your Impact, the Product Owners Tool for Continuous Learning webinar today. This is a webinar that's going to be a deep dive and exploration of the Comparative Agilities tool, the Product Owner Personal Improvement Tool, which is one of your exclusive member benefits as a member of Scrum Alliance. So in case you're not sure, or you got your certification through someone and then got some emails from Scrum Alliance, but you're not quite sure who we are the largest and oldest nonprofit membership organization in the Scrum and Agile space. We were established in 2001. And since that time, we have issued over 1,876,000 certifications across the globe. And we operate on the mission of advancing real-world agility by equipping and inspiring the change maker in everybody. So as a member of Scrum Alliance, you get access to quite a few really cool member benefits. You get access to our specially curated and created learning journey courses, which we partner with our amazing Certified Scrum Trainer community to build just for you. You also get connected to our incredible global community through things like our events, our webinars, our content. You get to really learn from people across the globe. And as part of that, you also get discounts to our regional Scrum gatherings and your global Scrum gathering. You also get access to the Retrium Retrospective tool, as well as our Comparative Agility tools. You get access to the Comparative Agility tool, as well as the Product Owner Personal Improvement tool. And if you also have your Certified Scrum Master with us, you get access to the Scrum Master Personal Improvement tool. So really quick before we dive in and I hand it over to our incredible hosts, a quick tour of the console you're in today. So if you have any questions for our speaker, I ask that you throw that in the Q&A box highlighted on your screen now, and I will do a moderated Q&A with our speakers at the end. We also encourage you to react throughout the webinar. You can send us emojis, let us know how things are going. If some piece of content really sticks out to you, we really love seeing all these reactions. And if you want to chat with your fellow attendees, I think you'll have all found the chat to drop in your location, but just in case, you can hop in there as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jorgen.
Okay, thank you so much, Molly. I really appreciate that introduction. I am Jorgen Hesselberg. I'm the co-founder of Comparative Agility, and I am joined by two amazing hosts today, Rune Meyer and Valerio Zanini. I think we just go over to each of them so they can give a little overview of who they are and what they do, because they are pretty amazing individuals. Why don't we start with you, Rune? I can see right now that you are in battle dress. What's going on? Where are you calling from, and what do you do?
Yeah, hello, Jorgen. Thank you for having me. I'm joining from Juba, South Sudan, where I'm currently serving in the United Nations peacekeeping operation. Due to my T-shaped skills, I had to take some time off software and do some military work in the meantime while waiting for new projects. So thanks for having me. I was happy to be one of the team that developed the PI tool that we're going to present. And I think I'm here to talk about what we did and how we achieved. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rune. And speaking of developing the tool, one of the leaders of that effort was Valerio Zanini. He is not just a product owner or product manager, he's also a teacher of product owners and managers. So Zanini, why don't you say hello and tell people a little bit about who you are?
Thank you, Jorgen. Hi, everyone. I'm Valerio. I'm a certified Scrum Trainer with the Scrum Alliance, and I've been a product owner in my entire career. I help Jorgen and the rest of the community facilitate the work to create the product owner assessment tool.
Awesome. And we will hear more about that later on. We'll talk about how the tool is created, how it can benefit you. That's part of the point we're doing this in the first place. So let me just share my screen here. We'll see if this is working out. And I will go through the agenda real quick. So the things we're going to go through, very simply, first, we're going to talk about how you can activate your exclusive and free benefits, because this is free. This is one of those things that I think it's pretty ironic right now that we're going through this upheaval. You know, we can see that companies are struggling. They're laying people off. There's lots of volatility and change going on. And at the same point, this is probably where agility is more important than it ever has been. So there is this ironic part going on. This is where we need to step up and show our value to not just ourselves and our community, but also to our companies. And I think a tool like this can be part of that journey. So part of what we're going to do here is to show you how you can activate that benefit. A lot of people aren't aware of how to do that, so we'll show you how to do that real quick. Then we'll go behind the scenes a little bit. Valerio and Rune gave you a little preview. We'll talk about how this tool was developed, because I think that's important for you to trust this tool and to feel that it's valid in your learning journey. You need to understand how it was created. And this is truly one of those that was made for us and by us as a community. So we'll talk about how that was created. Then we'll do a quick demo just to show you how the tool itself works. Always useful to know that. If you have any questions around it, we'll take care of those as well. And then we'll talk about some exclusive findings that we found after analyzing the data from how people are working as product owners. We were able to find a lot of things around what's working as a product owner, what's challenging, and where there's a lot of a disagreement. So we'll share some of those findings that I think will be quite useful and then kind of interesting for us as a community to see where we want to go next. And then we'll just wrap it up at the end with a Q&A. So that's what the agenda looks like. Of course, we'll be agile. If something happens, we'll try to adapt as we go along. But first, how do we activate the product owner PI? It isn't that difficult, but a lot of people aren't aware of how to do that. So we're just going to make sure we know how to do that right now. Very quickly, here are the steps. First, log into your Scrum Alliance account. It's pretty simple to do. You probably know where that is already. I'll show you afterwards. Click on benefits. You see there's a little link there to the left. Then you click on the card that's called Product Owner Personal Improvement Tool. Now, just click on that. That will not appear for you if you are not a CSPO. If you are a CSPO, you see that. Click on that. Once you do that, you can either sign up if you haven't signed up with Comparative Agility before, or you can log in if you already have an account. So pretty simple to do, but I will actually try to show you, because I think very often it's kind of easy to talk about, but sometimes it can be tricky to actually see how that works. So let me go in here and show this live. So I'm going to go in here now, share my screen, and go into the tool itself. Let's see if we go in here. I'll go right here, and now you should see my screen. Here is the Scrum Alliance webpage. I'm now logged in. What I'm going to do now is I'll show you exactly how to get there. I'll go to your account here. You go to your dashboard. And once you go to your dashboard, you'll be able to see, your profile in the Scrum Alliance. Then click on benefits. You can see I need to get my SEUs upgraded. That's one of the benefits of having that dashboard available to you. And then once you click on benefits, here's where you see that particular card, the Product Owner Personal Improvement Tool. So pretty simple. Easy to get to, but I think it's just one of those things that people sometimes forget as they do it. But just wanted to show you that so you know how to get in. So now let's go a little bit back in history and look at what happened. How did this tool come to be? It really was a community effort from the very beginning. It was one of those things where we said, you know what, let's see what we can do to help the community do better. That was the whole purpose. And where we started was that if we went back, we went to look at this behind the scenes, and in 2021, in July, is when we first launched the tool. It was truly a collaborative effort between, I think, 3 groups. It was the Comparative Agility Advisory Group, which is called the CAT, and then there was experts. You can hear the experts here. You can see them on the screen. Jeff Patton, Roman Pickler, or Kenny Rubin, who helped us. And then ultimately, there were additional volunteers that provided feedback along the way. In total, there's about 28 people from multiple time zones that worked on this. And we started around January 2021, and in July is when we released it. So it was a wonderful journey as we went through it, lots of lessons learned. But now we're going to see how we did it, because I think this is kind of part of what makes this tool useful. And it's because of how we got to the point, which was quite interactive and also covered a lot of different areas of expertise. So let me do this and let you take over here, if you don't mind, Valerio, and take us through the Miro board so we can see how we actually did the work of creating the personal improvement tool.
Let me start by sharing my screen with the Miro board. Here we go. That's a little bit of behind the scenes of how we did that. In order to create this tool, we had to put 3 things together. One, of course, was the community, the Scrum Alliance community. And because we wanted to, for this tool to be a community tool available to all the product owners within the Scrum Alliance community. The second part was the experience. We needed to partner with a company that could bring that experience in building a reliable, sophisticated tool to assess competencies and provide advice on the skill set. And that's why the Scrum Alliance partnered with Comparative Agility. And the third part was we needed people that had on-the-job experience and could guide us in making the right decisions in terms of deciding what kind of questions to include in the tool, what kind of skills to assess, and so on. So we reached out to the Scrum Alliance community, and we had, I don't remember the number now, Jorgen, probably was like 78 people that provided interest in supporting this activity. And we ended up with about 30 people that actually worked for several weeks on creating this tool. So I want to share a few things. The first thing is this. When we started this activity, we created a Miro board, and that was our facilitation tool, our space to share the knowledge and make decisions. The first thing we had to decide was what are the general areas, the general skill that we want to assess for the product owners, and the general areas they want to help the product owners grow. If you look at this picture, there are different areas. We identified 8 of these areas, and one of them, the one in the middle, manage the product backlog, is probably the one that product owners spend the most time with. On a daily basis, that's where the product owners probably focuses the most. But we wanted to expand that knowledge, expand that list with other areas that really help product owners to assess their skills and provide growth opportunities. So as they want to grow their expertise, they want to grow the skills, maybe grow in their career, what are all the different areas they should be looking at, they should develop? And hence we came up with these 8 different growth areas. And we also reached out to some experts, including Ken Rubin, Roman Pitcher, and Jeff Patton, to get their expertise, their advice, their guidance on what we were doing. As we got started on this activity, we grouped all the different volunteers and participants together, and we created 4 teams. Each team was responsible for working on 2 of those categories, 2 of those areas. And over a few weeks, they bonded, they shared their expertise, and then they worked at creating the assessment. Rune, for example, was one of the people that participated in one of these teams, and he may be able to share some of his behind the scenes experience in actually how it was to work with the team and what were some of the activities that the team did. Rune, would you like to share some?
Yes, thank you. So the team 4 that I was a part of, we worked with the two categories, leadership and measure value delivered. And you don't see that from the names, but one of us was sitting in US, one was in India, and one was in Europe. So it meant that we had a hard time finding times for our meetings as we were spanning over a lot of time zones. That was the first challenge. Then the second was that we also had to know what were actually the things we wanted to measure and how should we measure this for these categories, and what would be the smart things to ask about. So we would use the guide and the training material for the product owner trainings to also use that as a guide into how would this measurement and how could we assess the skill level for this. And it's only 3 names in the group in the Miro board now, but we had a lot of helpers, both from the other groups, from Valerio and from our super coaches in here. So as for instance, when we talked about this measure value delivered, I had a very long session with Roman Pinchler about values, and that was really lifting our understanding and also the input to the tool. So I will leave it here, Valerio.
Yeah, and so we did when we got started, we did a few activities in terms of creating teams, establishing team norms, all these kind of things, which is typical when you start a new team, like a team liftoff. And then maybe we can talk a little bit more about the actual process of selecting the different statements. I think I would like to start with this, and we need to explain the little mechanics, maybe the little philosophy or theory behind the statements. And Jorgen, maybe you are the most expert at this. Would you like to explain the Likert scale and how we structure the statements?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm definitely not going to claim to be an expert, but I certainly have some experience in it. Likert is a scale that is very common, especially in the social sciences. It is the most widely used survey methodology used in social science research, like psychology and sociology and things like that. One thing it does really well is that it works really well when you aggregate information, and it provides a lot of nuance. So the way it works is that instead of actually asking a question, what you will do is you will basically assert a statement, or you will provide a particular assertion. And then the user, the person who's responding, essentially then answers with a response to that assertion. And you see the question here is, the sprint retrospective is a safe space. That's a very simple statement. It's not very hard. I mean, it's very hard to kind of misinterpret that. It literally says, this is a safe space. And then it's you then as a respondent who can then respond to that with 5 different responses. Everything from strongly agree, which means that you definitely agree with that statement, with that assertion, and to all the way down to 1, which is strongly disagree. So every single survey item has a value from 5 to 1, 5 being a positive in that sense that we assert that, you know, having a safe space is a good thing. So if you score high on these particular statements, that's probably a good thing if you're a product owner. And then if you score low, that would be a negative thing. You'll also see that we do have a neutral response. And that is something that we have there because there are some people who don't quite understand how to answer the question, or it might not apply to them. So 3 is usually the neutral response in this sense. And you will see later on when we show you some of the insights that there are some people who actually don't know how to answer that particular question, which is also interesting. But yeah, the short answer is it's a really simple way to get some really insightful information in a lot of different survey items quickly.
Great. And for us, as we were doing the work, the challenge was to identify a list of statements that then we could offer to the product owners to assess their own competency level, their own skill set using the Likert scale. And these statements had to be concise and clear enough to be able to be understood, but also we wanted to have a relatively limited number of statements. And yet we had to have enough of these statements to be able to assess in each of these categories. So for example, for leadership or measure value delivery, what Rune mentioned earlier, we had to really work hard to understand which statements are the most representative for what we expect the product owner to be able to show and to be able to know. And here are all the different statements that the different teams created. We went through a few different rounds of this. In fact, you see some of these are in yellow, some of these are blue, different rounds of selecting those that we thought were the most important ones, the most valuable for the product owner to be able to assess the skills. And throughout a few different weeks, we iterated, so building iteratively and incrementally, like every good Scrum team. And we refined this list and finally finalized the list that created the product owner assessment. That is the story of how we got this tool done. And I'm going to pass it back to Jorgen to share maybe some of the insights that we collected from the users, from the owners, and see what we learned from that.
Thank you for that, Valerio. Yeah, and also add one more thing, because we did one more thing on top of all of this. We also had data scientists review our statements after this. So all of this work was all done, and after that, we had some data scientists look over our work and provide some insight if there was some confusion around how the statements were formed. So that's one additional step that we did on top, which is always nice for data integrity and things like that. I thought maybe before we go into the insights, I might actually show the tool. How about that? just to see how that works. Because yeah, we sort of teased you a little bit now to show you how we developed the tool, but now let's actually show the tool so you can see that also. So I thought I'll do that. And why don't we just do a quick demo and I can go through it and show you how the tool itself works. Let's see if I can go in here. I'll show my window here. Let's see if we can find the tool. I think this should be it. And now we'll have a chance to look at the tool and how it actually works. And here it is in all its glory. When you first log in, this is what you will be faced with. You will see a dashboard that will show you some pretty colorful graphics and also show you some information that I think you will find interesting looking at things over time. So let me go through what this is. Let's start in the very top here. If you see the top here, you see there's a timeline. That timeline is essentially a snapshot of how you performed at the time that you took the survey. So you can go back in time and see how you were doing and kind of keep a record of how you felt that you were doing over time and see how you performed in this tool. So that's a good way for you to kind of keep a track. What's important to know is that this is only your information. Nobody else can see this information. This is only for you, so you can feel safe to say exactly how you feel about these questions. Now, once you take the survey, and let's just show you how the survey itself looks. You click on Take the Survey, and once you do that, there will be a screen that opens up that talks about the survey. As Valerio mentioned, we ended up with about 48 questions. And once you take the survey, it's pretty simple. Again, it goes down to an assertion. I maintain an up-to-date understanding of my organization's strategy. Well, as a product owner, that's probably a good idea. I need to know how my organization's strategy is translated. And it's important for me to understand this. You answer that survey with an assertion, just like we showed. And then once you do that, you go straight to the next question. Here's a question that I think is really good. I understand what constitutes value to the business. This is important as a product owner because, well, those are the people that actually pay our bills. How is it that we provide value to the business? Is it about profitability? Is it about cost efficiencies? Is it about innovation? All of those things matter. And then the next question here I think is really great too. I understand what constitutes value to end users. Now we flip this a little bit and we say, okay, not just the business now that you work for, also the users who use whatever product and service you're delivering. Do we understand that value and their perspective? So you see what's going on. I'm obviously not going to go through all the questions, but I wanted to show you what type of questions are being asked and also how you as a user can answer those. So we'll go into some of the findings later on, and I think you'll find that very interesting. I'm just going to close out of this to go back again to show you this dashboard. I showed you earlier that you have this timeline. Every time you answer the survey, you will get a highlight like this that shows you exactly where you're doing, how you're doing in each of these categories. These categories are the competencies that Rune was talking about. If you click on any of these, you will drill down one more level. So you can go specifically in and say, okay, core business competencies, I want to see specifically how I'm scoring in each and every one of those. You can also look at this briefly here and say, okay, I can see here that I may have some challenges in discovery activities, but when it comes to leadership and in managing the backlog, I'm doing quite well. So very quick way for you to see how you're doing. Now, as you scroll down, this is where it gets interesting, because here you will have a number of automatically generated recommendations. These recommendations are based on the actual scores that you had when you took the survey. And then when you click on these here, you will get specific details of what you might want to do next. Now, one thing that we didn't talk about in great detail is that part of what we spent a lot of time on was the recommendations, because one thing is to come up with the actual questions. The other is to come up with recommendations. I don't know, Valerio or Rune, maybe you can say a little bit about that work, because I think that's really important. Part of what we're doing here is curating all of these different resources that are on the web and basically going down to the ones that we believe are valid and reliable. And one thing that we did, which I am very proud of, is that we're not showing just Scrum Alliance resources. That's not to say that those are not great, but we showed resources that were agnostic, so they could be from anywhere. Do you want to say anything about those resources, Valerio or Rune?
Maybe just a quick thought is taking an assessment and having a result or a score is useful. You understand which areas you need to develop more or less and so on. But then what do you do? What's the next step, right? That's what you were just talking about, Jorgen, is we want to help product owners take the next step. And that's why we created that library of additional resources, additional articles, books, videos, and so on, divided by specific areas, so that if you want to learn a specific thing, then you have that list available to you.
That's exactly right. And if you click on any of the links, you can go. Oh, sorry, Rune, I'll be quiet.
No, that's super fine, Jorgen. So I think we spent a lot of time in curating these recommendations, definitely also because none of us have read or seen all these books or articles or whatever. So we were definitely reading a lot and also evaluating a lot of other suggestions that were not put into the tool. But I think the beauty of the tool, as Jorgen was saying, is that you can assess yourself at the time. Then you can do some of the recommendations. You can read a couple of books. You can see some videos. You can read some blog posts. And then after some time, when you have tried to put this into practice, you can come back and you can reassess yourself in the tool. And then you will get other recommendations. That will be a continuous growth for you as a product owner. And that's what I find the biggest beauty of this tool.
I think that's a good point, because I think one of the things that's so dangerous is that we might believe that once we have a certification, we are masters, we are certified Scrum product owners. That does not end the journey. That just begins the journey. I know Valerio teaches that all the time. And this tool is just one of those things you can use to try to drive that journey for you. One thing you can do once you have done this is that you will start to see progress over time. And if you look at progress over time, you will essentially look at how you've been doing, showing the trends. Where is it that you're doing really well? Where have you been struggling? You can start to break it down by particular competencies. And you can also look at the World Index, which is an aggregate of all the product owners who've taken the tool, and see how you've been doing over time. Now, we're not doing this to sort of have competition here. It's not about you against the world, but it's good sometimes to have an idea of how you're doing and see that, you know what, others are struggling also at times. It's not quite so simple. Here you can see that this particular person had a little bit of a dip here at somewhere in 2023 for whatever reason. But hey, things are back up again. And yeah, this is a continuous journey. It doesn't end. But that's okay. We keep adding new items to learn from. And then as we do that, we grow in our craft. The personal improvement backlog is one thing that I think is really important. This is a number of items that you add to your backlog based on the recommendations. As you see here in the results, we show these generated backlog items that come from the recommendations. You can add any of these to your backlog. And to do that, you just click on this little icon here to the left. And once you do that, it will be automatically added to your personal improvement backlog. Now, this is not a Scrum board. We're not trying to be Jira here, but it's a very simple way for you to look at your personal improvement backlog as a simple list and say, here are the things that I found, looking at all the information, looking at the data, looking at how I performed, and looking at the recommendations from the tool. Here are the things that I'd like to go back to. Now, you can look at this, and typically we like to do this in an order of priority. You can also move that. So if you say, okay, I'm going to move this up, you can do that. Very simple. We're trying to make this as simple as possible. And as you're looking at the different tools and the resources, as you have read this, as you have rated it based on how you felt, you can then simply click on the little button here, so basically check mark. And then when you say, all right, I'm done with this, take it away so it doesn't take up any of my mental resources, it then gets placed in the completed column. So that's where that is now, and that's okay. This is now a bunch of information you've already completed, but it's there for your historical record. And I think that can be really useful also when, for instance, your manager might say, hey, it's been about 6 months since we spoke. What have you been doing lately? What are you doing to improve in your craft? This will then be a very simple way for you to go back and say, okay, well, as it happens, I keep doing what I can to improve how I work. And here's some examples of things I've been doing. So I think that could be really useful too. There is one more thing I'd like to show you. This is not used as much as we hoped, I'll be honest with you and say that, but we do also have a community here. And in that community, now we're in the staging environment, so this is not live, but it is live when you log in production. You will start to see that there's questions that are being asked that you can ask anyone in the community, and you can also choose to be anonymous if you want to. So the way this works is that you can ask any question you want. You can address it to everyone who is on the tool, or you can also address it just to experts. There is a group of people who are experienced CSPOs who will then get a little email notification. And you can also choose to be anonymous if you want to. And then once you answer or ask the question, you can then simply categorize it and save it. Very simple to use. It is being used, certainly, but not as much as we'd hoped. But still, I wanted you to know that that's a resource here that you can use. And it's great to see when discussions happen in such a safe environment. I think this is useful because usually when people do these things, we go to LinkedIn and stuff like that. But you know what? That information is all being used for advertising and data mining and all sorts of stuff. This is all safe. It's not being used for anything else. There's no commercial interest in this part. So I think that's one thing that I think is really useful. The last thing I'll show you is this element here. You have a chance to share your information with a coach, because this is a tool that certainly is just for you and it's completely confidential and encrypted. But if you want to share your information with a coach or maybe a trusted advisor, you can simply click on coach sharing. All you need to do is type in the name and the email of that person and let that person be added to your account. And once you do that, that person will be able to see the information that you have right now. And that person will be able to see that information as long as you allow that to be shared. That means that a coach like Valerio can look at your information. He can add additional backlog items if he sees that you might need some additional help that goes beyond what the tool can do. Or you can maybe do a coaching session online. But the point being, you have an opportunity to share information with your facilitator, with your trainer, if you'd like to do that as well. So that, in a nutshell, is what the tool is all about. On purpose, we try to make this simple. It is mobile optimized, so it should work really well on mobile platforms. It's pretty simple to use, and it's completely free. So that's one of those things that I think is really useful when we have, rough times that we're going through right now. And I think it's exactly what people need as we're trying to improve how we work as product owners and as Scrum professionals. So what I'll do now is I thought maybe we can go through some of those insights, because you did mention that, Valerio, that there are some insights. And I can see here that Molly is on it, and she's already on the next page. So we're sharing your screen now, aren't we, Molly? So I don't need to share mine, right? Yes, perfect. So let's go through this, because there were a few things that we found. And let's start with this first one. So if we look at the kind of things where product owners in general seem to score very high, there were a couple of things that stood out. You can see the items here. I interact with the team in a respectful way. I ensure the team can openly discuss challenges by modeling open, honest, and kind discussions. And I'm accountable for meeting the need of product ownership, even when others contribute. That's the scores that we saw was very high. Now, if you look at the items that have a low standard deviation, there were some similarities. Now, let me explain what standard deviation is for those who haven't been to college in a while, like me. Standard deviation is essentially a mathematical way to express the central tendency in the data. So if there's a lot of concentration in the data among the answers, there will be a very low standard deviation. So that means that there's a lot of agreement when there are low standard deviations. Think of a bell curve, for instance. And if you have a very steep bell curve, that means that there is a low standard deviation. Now, if you have a wide standard deviation, there is a lot of distribution inside of those answers. And that means that there's a lot of disagreement. So that's very simply what standard deviation can show us. So look at this, less variability. This is items where product owners tend to agree with each other. I interact with the team in a respectful way. I understand what constitutes value to the business. And I understand the team can openly discuss challenges by modeling open, honest, and kind discussions. We've seen some of this already. Let's do the next slide, Molly, and see if we can see some things pop up here. See right here, this first statement, it also has the highest score and it has the lowest standard deviation. So what do you think, Valerio or Rune, when you see this? When you look at this score, this is what product owners are saying that they're actually doing quite well with.
It shows that the role, the participation with the teams is well supported, and product owners in general are collaborating, have an open, transparent participation with the team, and even the standard deviation is relatively small, right? So there is quite a consent. Quite agreement around those statements.
That's exactly right. And if you click on the link, the next slide, Molly, I think we'll see something similar here. Again, we see both on the averages and the standard deviation, this item pops up here. I understand the team can openly discuss challenges by modeling open, honest, and kind discussion. One of the things that I also see when we look at this is that I think it shows that product owners are also coaches. That's what that stands out for me. When I look at this and say, okay, this is a person who isn't purely looking at value for the business or looking at profit margins. This is a person who also helps create a high-performing team. Rune, do you want to comment on that?
I think that's an important finding here. And I also think that's one of the reasons why one of the categories we were focusing on was also leadership. Product owner isn't necessarily a formal leader in an organization, but it's definitely a leadership role and a leading role in an organization.
Completely agree. Now let's do the next slide, because now it gets interesting. Now we're going to look at some of the challenges, and there are some challenges also. Here's a couple of things that stand out. The first one here, these are the 3 top survey items with the lowest score. So this is where product owners in general were saying they were not doing so well. I observe users with our product in their normal environment at least 2 to 3 months. So this is talking about user interaction. Pretty low score there, 303. I use at least 2 techniques for measuring value. That's another low score. And then I create the key user personas for my product, relatively low as well. Now, here's where we have the highest standard deviation. These are the statements where there was a lot of disagreement inside our data set of product owners. Again, I observe users with our product in their normal environment, at least 2 to 3 months. I create key user personas. And then lastly, this is something slightly different. I am the key role responsible for defining product strategy for the product or the feature set that I own. Let's click on that next link again, if you don't mind, Molly. You see here, this again is popping up. Not so common, but here you see a low score and you see a high level of distribution. So what is this telling us, Valerio? I think some of this is probably obvious, but what's your first reaction when you see this?
Yeah, it's interesting because the score of 3 is the neutral score, right? So what?
That's true.
Right. So what the product owners are communicating here is, yeah, we do and we don't, right? Maybe sometimes not, and so on. Now, it's true that everybody's different, every organization is different, every product is different, right? But in general, in working with within the industry across different companies and so on, I have observed that very often the product owner, either because of what is requested of them by the organization, so company culture, or because of their own professional development, how they became a product owner, they tend to focus mostly on the execution, on delivering a product. And often the part about discovery and the part about measuring value is not a big strength. But for product owners to really be successful at building the right product, at solving the right problem for their customers, and finding the right solution to be able to actually deliver on that, they need to do discovery activities, they need to understand their customers, they need to measure value. So what these scores are highlighting to me is just making that very clear that this is still a big gap in the industry.
I think you're right, Valerio. If you don't mind, Molly, let's do the next one. I think this is very similar. This one here. This is very similar to what you were saying. This is not just a product, it's also the personas. The whole idea that we may, as product owners, not know enough about the people that we're actually delivering value for. Rune, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, Jorgen, I had a long UX background, and of course, for me, personas, when I'm developing something, is definitely key to know who I'm making the product for, and also to be able to know what would be useful for that user. So me myself would like this to be a much higher score, but I also understand in practical life it might be a time-consuming activity that someone would see as an overhead, but I think it definitely has a value. So, but I see also that the deviation here is such high that some people are definitely doing it a lot, and others are not doing it at all. That's my assessment.
And that's a really good point. That's exactly what that standard deviation is telling us. It's not that they are, the score is right around neutral, 3.18, but it also means that quite a few people are doing it while others are not doing it at all. And then that's exactly what we want to try to highlight with this data, to show that inside of our community, this is something that isn't happening, at least not on a consistent level. So I think that is interesting. Let's do the next slide, Molly, if you don't mind. This is something I think is interesting too. This goes to the neutrals. So this is looking at the survey items with the most neutral responses. So these are the people who didn't feel comfortable saying that they agreed or disagreed. They just sort of chose neither agree or disagree, which is that score in the middle. As you can see here, and it goes back to value and product and users again, there's a pretty big group of people here that chose this option. I have identified market opportunities for my product. Around 30% chose 3. I use at least 2 techniques for measuring value. Again, around 30% there too. And I'm able to define and measure the value of my product. This is a little bit scary for me, because if you as a product owner don't know how to measure value of the product, isn't that a deficiency as a product owner? Valerio, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this.
If you don't know the value that your product is delivering, you don't know if your product is a good product or not. So what is it that we are building? And that should be actually the first question we should ask ourselves as product owners when we start a new project or working on a new product, is what is the value? What is the outcome that we should achieve? What is the value we should deliver? If we don't know that, what are we doing? What is it that we are building? So to me, again, that statement here, 30% of people responding neutral on that, it feels like that needs some reinforcement in the industry. And often that comes because product owners are just on the receiving end of corporate directives, orders, the next big product requirement document they need to build, and just focus on building it. I get it. But that's not the full picture of a product owner. So one takeaway from this conversation, hopefully, and by using this tool, is a possibility for product owners to learn about other areas that they may not be covering right now. They may not have a strong skill set right now, but they may want to develop these areas in order to grow in their career, grow in their job as well.
I like that. I don't know, Rune, if you want to add something to it.
No, I'm agreeing so much with Valerio in this, but I think we are all on different stages on our journey. Like Valerio said, some of us we are new in this. Some of us have been doing it for many years, and you might work with in a rather large organization where this comes from within the organization and not outside from. But this is the full-fledged of the product owner role, and for many of us, adding new skill sets to our base would make us available for other jobs and bigger tasks to come, and that's what this tool can help you to.
I appreciate that, and I think you're completely right, especially in the environment we're now. You know, it's really hard for us to show value in general as coaches and as product owners. One of the ways we can do that is to be very clear on how we can help the organization gain in whatever they think is important. That was the question we asked earlier. Is it about cost efficiencies? Is it about profit margins? Is it about innovation? Whatever that is, what we can do as product owners is to help in those areas and help our products and services meet those goals. So I think this is good information. And I think it is an accurate reflection of some of the challenges that product owners are dealing with today. Why don't we do the next one here, Molly? I think we're trying to wrap things up with some of the conclusions. Some of this, I think, is evident from the data. And I think this is also, for me, a very positive thing. The whole idea around interpersonal skills and how we are showing that we are product owners. Yes, we're focused on value, we're focused on products, but we're also focusing on creating great teams. I think that's something that I think comes clearly across from the data here. And I think that's another reason why having CSPOs is important for any organization, so that you can foster really high-performing teams. But then we have the idea of the user engagement. And this is what Valerio and Rune both were talking about. You see that there's issues there around user personas, understanding value and measuring value. A lot of people didn't even have more than one way of measuring value. There's lots of ways to do that, and we have those examples in the tool. But I think that's something we need to do too. We need to go beyond, story points or simple variations like that. We need to think of things like cost of delay, lead time, innovation factors, and things like that. Some of the conclusions, if you don't mind clicking on the next one here, some of the findings out of this, I think, number one, I don't know, Valerio, maybe you want to take us through the first one. It sounds, like one of those things that we Agilists really love to do anyway.
And what this is also highlighting is that besides the product owners' competencies, skill set, maybe preferences in what they like to do or not, there is also sometimes there is also a limit in what the product owner can actually do because of the organizational culture and the way that the role is created. So this can also be useful for the organization, like at the team level or the broader level, to understand what are the areas that we leverage and support the most, and which areas are we, let's say, weak instead. Where can we grow? And now we identify opportunities for the organization to start growing, start expanding in different areas. That's what is my takeaway from this, right? When we want to emphasize continuous learning, adaptation, using engagement techniques, and so on. This is all about how do we create that culture of continuous learning, and how do we grow as an organization.
I completely agree. And as a community, that's maybe something we should focus more on too, not just the learning part, but also the how do we show value part, because I think that's going to increasingly be demanded of us in the environment we're in now. You know, when people say, okay, why should I hire a CSPO? Well, it's because we can show you how you create value. We know how you can create value for your customer, how you can measure it, and we can help you accelerate that. I think that's a lot easier for us to sell ourselves, so to speak, if you think of us as a product, when we can communicate those things pretty accurately and succinctly. I think data in general is something we will see more of. AI is everywhere. Having information beyond gut feel, I think, is increasingly more important. So I think using data as part of our decision making is going to help us also as we market ourselves to our customers, and those customers are people that hire us, if you think about it. So I think that's good. I don't know if you want to add anything, Rune. You're in the middle of a war. It's not really a war zone, but you're going through some challenges right now. But I think your skills as a product owner are useful there also.
Yeah, definitely. I get to use some of the things I learned during my time as a product owner, also in the projects I'm running now, which are rather large logistic projects. But I believe so much in what you were saying about showing our value to our customers or to our employers, that we can actually help to utilize data to do the right investments. Because when money are low, then it's important that we spend the money where they really give what we would call in a military way, bang for the bucks. So yeah,
that makes sense. Thank you for that, Rune. Let's go to the next slide, if you don't mind. Again, I promise that I will reiterate this, because I think a lot of people are a little bit confused about how you access the tool, but this is how you do it. You go to the Scrum Alliance page, you log in, go to benefits on the left-hand side. Once you do that, you click on it. And again, it's completely free, and it is exclusive to CSPO. So take advantage of that when you have it. Next thing I want to show.
Really
oh, sorry.
Jorgen, we did have a question from someone about they were able to access it through the Scrum Alliance dashboard, but then when they got to the tool, it was locked on the comparative agility side. Could you explain a little bit of how to unlock it on the comparative agility side?
Yeah, so when that happens, there are times when that can fail. That's probably because of an API call that fails. The good news is, if you write support@comparativeagility.com, I promise you that within 2 hours, we will have that resolved. So just type in support@comparativeagility.com, just type in your email and say, hey, I'm a Scrum Alliance member, I have a certificate, somehow I can't access the tool even though I follow those directions, and we will make sure that happens right away. Usually that happens automatically, but there might be cases where an API call might fail, and then we will take care of that for you right away. And Molly, I hope you don't mind if I do a plug for this. Will I see you in New Orleans, by the way, Molly? Can I ask you that?
Yes. Yeah, if you come to New Orleans to the Global Scrum Gathering, you can hang out with both Jorgen and myself. So I think that's enough of a reason to come. But we also have incredible speakers, incredible sessions, some really fun activities. We're going to be in New Orleans, so we have a Mardi Gras themed Monday mingle. So it's going to be quite the party. But yes, no, please come and hang out with us in New Orleans. It's going to be an incredible 3-day conference, and this will be my 5th one, and they just keep getting better every time.
We're going to be there too. We'll have a little booth, and we'll be more than happy to show you the tool, ask any questions you might have. I think we might have some giveaways. We'll do whatever we can to engage with the community. We love the Scrum Alliance community, so we'll be there, and we're very excited to be there again in a month or so. So that's that. I think we have some time for some questions, Molly, but I think that's about it, unless there's anything else. But this has been a pleasure just to show the tool and to share with the community. And thank you again to Rune and Valerio for taking the time, not just to build the tool, but to be available. So yeah, let's pause for some questions, and we'll do whatever we can to answer them.
Of course, we have just a couple. I think y'all were so incredibly thorough, but the question we have is, how do you reconcile the difference between knowing how to do things and wanting to do them versus not being able to do those things in one's current company situation?
This sounds like a CST kind of question. Is that right, Valerio?
Can you repeat? I didn't get it. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, of course. How do you reconcile the difference between knowing how to do things and wanting to do them versus not being able to do these things in one's current company situation?
So wanting to do the thing and not being able to, right? So for example, I'm just maybe trying to make an example here, and the person that asked the question may jump in and see if correct. Like for example, the organization doesn't really support the product owner in doing some discovery activities. They just want us to build from a list of requirements and just execute on the work, right? How do I even create the opportunity? How do I even start that? Well, there are many different ways to do that, and probably you don't have the time to look at all of them. But certainly, one way to do that is this: whenever you are planning to build a new feature, a new functionality, before you write any code, for example, create a quick prototype on paper. How would that thing look like? It could be a prototype, a storyboard, or something. And then trying to find a couple of people, it could be stakeholders in the organization, it could be some customers, somebody you work with, ask them for feedback. That's a quick validation. And then you decide whether or not the feature you're planning to build actually works with your customers. It doesn't take long, it doesn't take a long time, but it starts to creating that mental process of, look, before we build anything, we should test it and validate with our customers, right? And so on. So it just getting that process started in whatever way you have available within your organization. I don't know if that was what the person was asking, but that was what came up for me in understanding the question.
Yeah, Faith, if you want to drop in Q&A or in chat if that answered your question. Otherwise, we don't have any other questions in our Q&A today, so I think we are good to wrap it up, which thank you so much to all 3 of our wonderful presenters for an incredible webinar about this pretty cool tool. I hope all of you who are in attendance either have used it before and have learned a couple new ways to use it, or if you've never used it before, I'm hoping you're feeling inspired to go in and use the tool. At the end of this, when we close the webinar, a survey will pop up. It should be a super quick survey for y'all to take. We would really appreciate if you're able to take it. You will be able to access the on-demand recording of this as well as all the resources tomorrow. You'll get an email from us as soon as it's available. And we will also include the link to claim your Scrum Education Unit for attending this webinar. So again, thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. We are so excited to have you as part of our community, and we will see you for our next webinar.
Thank you.